What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Stay Hot. I'm BLAIDEN Kirk, joined as always by my two favorite co-hosts of all time, in Matthew Spinauer and THEO Ash. Today, we are joined once again by the wonderful PFF senior football analyst and NFL film junkie, Seth Galina. It's a pleasure to have you back, man. How are you doing? It's been a while.
It's been a while. I was available many weeks, to be honest, between here and last time. So I'm not sure. This is just my first time
we didn't
back.
want you.
Okay. Sorry. That was the
frequently in the meetings, and we're like, I don't know. We'll wait until our listeners forgot about last time, and then we'll bring them back.
I appreciate you guys having me. I had a good time last time.
Well, today we're going to talk about some of the favorites for Coach of the Year in the NFL, along with doing our own worst Coach of the Year award and kind of see who is crowned of that. Maybe take a look at some candidates in 2023 that could be on the block to replace some of those terrible coaches. But yeah, let's just hop right in. Coach of the Year, right? The Eagles are obviously doing great, so Sirianni is going to be on that table. Do we all think it's going to be Sirianni, or are there some other guys do we think that might be doing a bit of a better job with what they have?
I think the path to beating Sirianni for Coach of the Year is definitely there, in the sense that he's got a very stacked team. And obviously, like, Coach of the Year isn't about just the best record straight up. It's about who beats expectations the most. But then you look around, it's like Daboll had a chance at it, and now the Giants are not winning games, and they really needed to win more games than this. If he gets to like 10 wins, there's an argument for it, but I'm not sure he's even going to do that. And I feel like, Pete Carroll had a shot at it, but the Seahawks are sort of tapering off. So I think it's going to be him still.
Yeah, it's hard for anyone, but because this, out of all the guys that you talked about, I mean, Kevin O'Connell, Daboll, all these guys who had Pete Carroll, like you said, all these guys who had hot starts have kind of cooled off. And the only guy who hasn't cooled off relative to expectations are the Eagles and Sirianni. So it's going to be really tough for anyone to beat him at this point. I think Mike McCarthy had a chance had they looked good against Houston and then beaten Philly. I don't know when they play them in the next couple of weeks. There was a chance. And same with all these guys. Like Salah is part of this group of guys who looked really good, looked like they had a chance, and now they've lost a couple. So it's got to be Sirianni.
Yeah, maybe if Dallas and the Eagles finish with the same record, let's say Dallas crushes the Eagles. I don't think that's going to happen, but let's say Dallas crushes the Eagles and then the Eagles drop another dumb one. Cowboys go on to win out. Same record, and then the one loss the Cowboys had against the Eagles was with Cooper Rush. I think that's a path.
I also think Shanahan has a path if Purdy closes it out undefeated, to lose your starter, to lose your other starter, and then to win games with Mr. Irrelevant. I know that 49ers fans are all mad at Shanahan because Jerry Rice tweeted that, why are all our skill position players hurt? It's because Shanahan, he runs them up the middle. And it's he's blaming him for the Jimmy Garoppolo injury. I was on a podcast with a 49ers fan the other day, and we theorized that Jerry may have been drinking before sending that post. So I don't know. There is some 49ers Twitter is a weird place. And I know the Shanahan is a divisive issue in his own fan base right now. But I really think that, he always does a fantastic job with the play calling. And if he can win games, and maybe he ends with the 2 seed in the NFC with Brock Purdy, and the Eagles are the 1 seed with all these weapons, and Jalen Hurts, who could win MVP if they go 15-1 or 16-1 now. I could see Shanahan with a path as well. But it'll probably be Sirianni. If I had a vote, I might vote for Daboll just because I had the Giants winning 2 games, and I think there is not a less talented roster in the league right now than the Giants. They have no wide receivers. They've got Andrew Thomas and Saquon, and I think Dexter Lawrence and Adoree Jackson. It's not that bad, but overall, I think they're overcoming
Slayton is would be a good 2.
Yeah, Slayton has been good. Yes, that is true. But I do feel like they're kind of overcoming a talent deficiency almost every single week. And as long as they're in the playoffs at all, if I had them winning 2 games based on the talent they had, I think you could credit maybe Daboll with developing, because Slayton was talented and then he kind of fell out of favor in the Joe Judge world and all of that. And now he's back, and you can kind of maybe credit coaching for Slayton being there at all, or any of these guys being there at all, Saquon Barkley's resurgence. So I might vote for Dable still, but I don't think the voters will, because I do think they're going to probably end with a losing record, but I don't know. That's just
I mean, it's going to be Sirianni. Like unless they lose 2 out of the last 3, like the Eagles will be fine and he'll win the award. But I do want to add what you're saying about Dable, because I think when I look at their offense, him bringing in Kafka to run the offense, and I don't think Dable calls the plays, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's Kafka who calls the plays, and then bringing in Martindale on defense. So let's start with defense. Really, I think bringing in a guy who's going to create chaos when you don't have the roster is probably the best move. And like, they don't care. Like, they know, and the offense knows that they're going to play man, and it doesn't really matter because they feel like they're going to create enough chaos up front that they're going to get to the quarterback before you have a chance to kind of deal with all that man coverage and not knowing the coverage. And the teams have done an okay job recently against them. The Cowboys on that Thursday afternoon game on Thanksgiving did a good job of dealing with it. But I think that's a move when, like you said, you're not a talented roster. You have a guy who can probably play in man coverage in Adoree Jackson, like you said, but like, hey, let's just bring all the variance. Let's bring the chaos and variance. And then on the offensive side of the ball, you look at what Dable had done in Buffalo, Kafka coming from Kansas City, and you don't really see, definitely from a macro level, you don't really see either of those offenses with the Giants this year. You just see an offense that's like, hey, we're going to do everything we can to kind of hold Daniel Jones' hand through the next 60 minutes.
Yeah, right.
It is one
reaction
of the,
flood.
hate to use the word, but it is like the fake offense. And good for them for just like going headfirst into that, because you look at last year and like the Giants, relatively similar players. I mean, Andrew Thomas was already starting to develop into a really good player, and they put Daniel Jones in tough situations that he's just not good enough. So hey, I'm on board the Dable train. I don't think Daniel Jones is going to be the quarterback when they inevitably do break through, but I'm on board the Dable train.
I feel like there's
I
feel like there's a decent subsection of Giants fans who are more pro Daniel Jones than you would expect them to be. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but I think it's like I said.
How many fan bases of teams aren't pro their starting quarterback?
Oh, plenty.
If you win 7 games, if you win 8 games, like it doesn't matter. Your starting quarterback is the guy. You ride with him the rest of your life. That's it.
Yeah.
I have an Aaron Brooks jersey. Okay, I still ride with Aaron Brooks.
Yeah, I have a Baker jersey. We all know this. This isn't.
My hot Daniel Jones take is, if he went somewhere else, I think he could be Ryan Tannehill, which isn't, I don't think, even a hot take. But I think Giants fans, they're always like, oh my God, he has never had any weapons. He could look so much better than he does. And it's like, well, I think that's true. Like, the best wide receiver he's ever thrown to was Kadarius Toney for a game, and Darius Slayton right now, most likely. If you gave him like AJ Brown and a good offensive line, like I really think he could be up there in efficiency. He doesn't turn the ball over that much, or he doesn't throw interceptions that much. The fumbling is a different issue. I think he could be like, he's got the legs. I think he could be like very Tannehill-y and maybe trick the nerds with a really efficient season one of these days with a good roster. Yeah. But I think like, what's the ceiling there with him? So
the Daniel Jones issue, and especially when you compare him to Tannehill, and real ball knowers would know this, but it's the pocket hitches. Tannehill's feet are so good in the pocket, so you can get to the point where, hey, you can put him in this offense, and obviously, like you said, skill talent around him. Like when he had AJ Brown, a year of Julio Jones at like 40%. Obviously the running game with Derrick Henry, blah blah blah. I still, when I watch Daniel Jones, I still see the guy who doesn't have his footwork in order, who's still like taking 3 hitches to throw like a 7-yard speed out. You know what I mean? And it's like, oh man, because like you're right, they can run the ball. I don't know if you ever. I think I coined this. I think he's a sneaky good runner. I don't know if anyone's ever said that about a white quarterback before, but so like, that there's a lot there. But I just think there's this like very low ceiling, which is the scary part, I think, about him.
Yeah, he still is not above like sailing an easy pass to the flat, like 3 yards above the wide receivers. I think I was watching the Giants the other day and I saw him do that because of his, and I was like, why do you still miss those dudes?
It's like they're playing with like a 60 overall in Madden. It's ridiculous.
I'm not moved by hypothetical Ryan Tannehill.
No,
it doesn't. Anthony Richardson is on the way, and Daboll will make him Josh Allen too, obviously, and then Giants fans will forget all about him. So,
and then at that point, Daboll can win Coach of the Year. When that happens, then he can win Coach of the Year. And then he can win. When he augments.
Sirianni does deserve it, though. Like
I like
stacked team, obviously.
I like Sirianni, but
I like Sirianni a lot too. I think he's very Philly too. I remember we talked to Jordan Palmer one time, and he was like, "It's always good when a quarterback matches their city's like energy, like Lamar in Baltimore or Josh Allen going up to Buffalo. He's just a very like went to college in Wyoming. It's just like a very kind of natural fit for the idea. And when I look at Sirianni and he's like got these like huge bags under his eyes and he's like turning around after the Colts win and like yelling at the audience, I'm like, this guy's very kind of, I feel like he should show up at Patty's Pub at some point and like just kind of yell. He just kind of seems like he encapsulates the vibe of the city. Not that like helps him as a coach. I just like the fit in terms of like what he is in Philadelphia. And I mean, their scheme, it's pretty tough to pick nits in there. I mean, Jalen Hurts has developed an insane amount. He's legitimately incredibly good. And the RPO, everything they do is just, I love that they go back to the same play, like versus the Giants. They ran that like power, that GT power, like 3 times in a row. And I think that's what it was. And it just did it every time. Like he's not afraid to play the hits, and he's not afraid to do some interesting stuff as well. And it's kind of a good blend of just not overthinking it, but also having a pretty complex and nuanced offense without doing too much like to overcomplicate things. I don't know, but he's definitely a very deserving winner.
Maybe. I do think if we're talking about like expectations though, like the Eagles, I remember a lot of people in the offseason were like, man, this team could like win the Super Bowl if their quarterback wasn't Jalen Hurts. So then I think the guy that you look at that exceeded expectations was Jalen Hurts, not necessarily Nick Sirianni. So that's the only thing.
I'm kind of on board with that. Yeah.
I think a lot of people might look at that and be like, oh, well, did Sirianni really overcome, or did Jalen Hurts just actually become that guy and the team just met expectations at that point?
Yeah.
So then the answer is Daboll really is like the forerunner for exceeding expectations this year, I think.
They just
would either be that or
Mike McDaniel and Saleh up there.
I would put Saleh up there just because, like, especially, bro, this when Zach Wilson is bad, he is like maybe the worst quarterback in football.
What do you mean? What do you mean when?
As in when he's on the field.
When the opposing team is kicked off.
How many times did we have to hear people be like, well, but he's 5-2, but he's.
I feel a lot of needed 2 more to get to that 7-win mark, and they took him out too soon.
Yeah, exactly. So they're at that. So if you're getting Zach Wilson, he's a winner hype, I think that definitely deserves a lot of credit.
Well, it was an interesting race up until every other possible candidate went on a losing streak all at the same time.
But it's crazy. Like you said, like we said before, the Seahawks are losing games. Like the Vikings aren't playing well anymore. Like it's crazy. That Tua and the Dolphins lose on a big game. It's just there's no one else but Sirianni right now.
But then if Sirianni wins Coach of the Year, Jalen Hurts can't win MVP, and I can't have. I
think it can. Don't underestimate the voters giving a 15-1 team a bunch, or 16-1 a bunch of credit. I think the voters, if they finish with 1 loss, they'll give Howie Roseman GM of the Year, Jalen Hurts MVP, and They have that, right? Executive year. They don't like announce it, but I believe that award does exist.
Pretty sure it does.
I could be totally wrong though.
No, it's an NBA.
But I think they'll sweep.
What do you mean they don't announce it? Like they slip an envelope under Howie Roseman's door.
Congratulations.
Well, I guess I don't watch the ESPYs, but it never feels like that the executive of the year gets like the hype that coach of the year does or anything like that. I feel like there's also like assistant coach of the year. Does that also exist?
Assistant coach of the year?
In college, there's like the Broyles Award for assistant coach, but I don't know if there is one for the NFL.
I think there
like
is. I don't know.
Of the year.
I could be totally just maybe it came to me in a dream, but I don't know. No one ever. They would give it to an Eagles guy. The Eagles might win defense if they go 16-1. The winning bias, they might get defensive player of the year. They won't. They'll get comeback player of the year with
TJ Edwards, defensive player of the
year. Yeah, I think so. I think I am saying that.
Darius Slay is not having that good of a season this year to win defensive player of the year.
I saw him get beat by Kenny Golladay. Wait, no. I saw him get beat on a slant in that Giants game by some nobody Giants receiver, and he can't win it anymore. But and their comeback player of the year, who would be their comeback player of the year? Maybe Miles Sanders. I don't know.
Yeah.
They'll
give it to Jordan Davis after he comes back in
in season.
In season.
All right.
I was gonna say Bradbury, honestly, kind of, but I don't think it really fits the actual comeback player of the year thing. Yeah.
No, Gino's winning comeback player of the year.
Almost certainly, yes.
Yes. But worst coaches. Who's the worst coach? All right, so we know Sirianni's probably.
This is another one that I think is locked up.
It's Hackett, right?
If we're not counting Matt Rule, who got fired after 5 games, then it's Hackett.
It's Nathaniel Hackett.
Well, Seth, you're a Saints fan, so I don't know if Dennis Allen has any claim to this title. I haven't watched the Saints that much this year, honestly, because I think they're incredibly boring.
Because they stink.
And they're boring and they're bad. So I couldn't give you any kind of in-depth scheme break. I couldn't say anything about it, not much less in depth. So I guess maybe I don't know if he's doing a fine job or a horrible job, but I think it's got to be Hackett. And Hackett, I think the coaching vibe check is I'm not even going to look at film anymore when teams hire coaches. I'm just going to watch a mic'd up video because I didn't even know that much about Hackett as a Packers fan because it's LaFleur's off. It's usually all the credit goes to LaFleur, and Hackett, it's hard to know exactly what he does and doesn't do. So I watched him mic'd up after the Broncos hired him, and I was like, oh my God, this is horrible, because he's quoting Anchorman, and I don't want my coach doing that. I don't want my coach quoting Anchorman. I don't want him being as goofy as he is. I want an asshole. Kyle Shanahan, give me a bigger asshole than Nathaniel Hackett. And then the training camp stuff started rolling in where he's making the players hug after fighting. I'm like, these guys do not want to do that. There was some story about how happy-go-lucky he is and how they're doing Kahoots to Kahoot quizzes. Seth, I don't know. Have you ever taken a Kahoot quiz, Seth? Or is this just a still Gen Z experience?
I'm not frozen. I'm just not going to answer that question. I've never heard those words before. I don't know what they mean.
Bro doesn't know what a Kahoot quiz is.
It's like a goofy. We did it in high school all the time and even college. It's just kind of a goofy quiz website where you just practice for a test or something like that. And it's just so he was making taking these high school Kahoot. It's about as goofy as it sounds. And he threw in Star Wars trivia, and they wrote this article about it. And literally the linemen in the article were like, I don't like when he puts in a funny one. It's a direct quote from the article. And I was like, I just cannot imagine losing a big game and hearing Russ and Hackett talk to you. So just
that's the thing. That's the thing, Theo, is we're over here oh, well, the quarterback has to fit the atmosphere and all. Bro, Nathaniel Hackett and Russell Wilson are perfect for each other. They're just not perfect for anyone else.
You can't win games like that, man. You can't. It's just not. it's just not going to work. It's never going to work. And I don't know, like, go ahead. I don't know, like his scheme stuff is probably like better than it looks right now. He's just got a washed Russell Wilson running it, and you could have quite literally any scheme in the world. You could have any head coach in the world, and if washed Russell Wilson is running your offense, it's probably not going to go very well. But the end of game decisions and just kind of the overall, like, I don't want to be mean to him. He seems like a perfectly like nice person, but he just seems like a substitute teacher. Like the overall vibe check and the overall clock management, like it doesn't even matter with the scheme at that point if you've got Russ. So he's definitely my vote, but I don't know if there's any other. There's a lot of bad coaches right now on the hot seat. So
I think Hackett reminds me a lot of like Elon Musk in the sense that he just tries so hard. The only thing he wants in his life is to be funny. Yes. Doesn't care about, because it's like he's this guy. You know, his dad, Paul Hackett, is like this like legendary football coach. He coached for so many years, and it's almost like Nathaniel just like did not. It's like, oh, he's being pulled into like into his dad's business. And he doesn't want to, like, super reluctantly does it. And he just wants to be a stand-up comedian. That's like all he wants to be, a stand-up comedian. And I think it's and you know, you look at Mike McDaniel in Miami, who I think is probably more of just a genuinely, doesn't try to be funny, but is funny. Like, it's just clearly people like him like that. And he's just funny, doesn't try. And he just like, he doesn't have to add a funny question to a Kahoot quiz. He's just like a funny guy, whatever. So I think that to me is kind of the issue there. Tough, but at the end of the day, to flip it and to give a little leeway to Nathaniel Hackett, Russell Wilson stinks. That's it, right? He just kind of stinks right now, so it's tough.
Yeah, that is true. I have so many Nathaniel Hackett like story. I became obsessed for a while of just like finding stories about this guy because I listened to the Athletic football pod about all the new coaches, and they brought in Bortles to like describe what Hackett is like. And Bortles talked about this scene where Hackett made them dress up as like Austin Powers and shoot a video.
Yeah,
and I think that's fucking hilarious. Okay.
Yeah. What hyper masculine guy in the National Football League wouldn't want to do that? But I just love talking about Nathaniel Hackett. It's a problem. I'm way too mean to him. If you search from Theo Ash like Hackett on Twitter, and you will find just some of the meanest things I've ever said about anybody. So he seems like a good guy. I just don't want him to coach anymore. I just don't want him to coach an NFL team anymore. So that's my thoughts on it. I don't know who else. Seth, you have watched the Saints. I honestly, since I have not seen anything, I'm legitimately curious. Is Dennis Allen one and done? Do you think that there's any redeeming qualities from this team from a structural standpoint, or like obviously he's a good defensive coordinator, but so is Todd Bowles, and like that doesn't mean the clock management is good. That doesn't mean the player management is good, or doesn't make you a good head coach. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that situation in New Orleans?
Yeah, I think, and maybe you guys won't agree with me, but when you're like part of a team's Twitter, it's like I follow a lot of people on Saints Twitter, and you follow people on whatever your favorite team's Twitter is. And maybe I'm just a contrarian by nature, but it's like, all right, everyone on Saints Twitter wants Dennis Allen fired. Everyone thinks he's the worst coach of all time. So I'm like, oh well, actually, maybe he deserves another year, because at the end of the day, like the roster kind of sucks. Like from top to bottom, the roster, and it was always going to happen. And it just so happened. Sean Payton left the team because the roster sucked. Sean Payton wants to coach football, and he's going to coach football next year. And luckily for the
he's
Saints,
like talking about it on the broadcast. Yeah, they're like open. He's not even like, he's like, oh, I would love to coach that Lamar Jackson guy.
And luckily for the Saints, because of that, they're going to get a first round pick back for somebody, thankfully.
Right.
Because they don't have a first round pick this coming draft. So So I just think the roster is not good. The offensive line is not good. Kamara is just not, and he's a running back. Guess what? It happens. I still have hope for him coming back. Give him a better surrounding cast, and it'll be better. The receiving core, they got lucky to hit on Chris Olave. Not that I didn't like Chris Olave coming in the draft, but it's still drafting. You never know what's going to happen. And they got lucky with him. They got lucky with Rashid, who's been really good for them over the past month or something. But your starting quarterback gets injured, though Andy Dalton, great. He's been. I know. I work for PFF. I know people are mad that he's PFF's highest graded quarterback of all time. He's been playing really good. He really has been playing at a super high level. So that's been good. But again, the O-line sucks. And the defense is just getting old. Tyrann Mathieu getting in there has just been okay. And I think we all knew that after watching what he was in Kansas City last year. So linebackers are good. Warner's good. Keaton Ellis has come on and been good. But then you traded. You have to play kind of three linebackers on the field for a lot of time because you traded your nickel in the middle of training camp for nothing. So it's Cameron Jordan is not having a great year.
He is. I think
he's also 33. He's
right.
You know what I mean? Eventually this was going to happen. Marshawn Lattimore's missed a lot of time. Paulson Adebo missed some time. Marcus May missed some time. So it's yes, is clock management stuff good? Is the player management stuff good? I don't know. But the roster is just not good enough. And it's too bad because they went all in thinking that it was good enough. Obviously, the injury, no one can predict the future on injuries, but I don't think it's all Dennis Allen's fault. And because I go back to the same thing, Sean Payton didn't want to coach his team. And why should we fire Dennis Allen after 1 year?
And I think firing Allen would kind of probably mean a total end of an era. Pete Carmichael has been there for a long, long time. Are they ready to say goodbye to him and Allen when it's been so long? It's been such a long time. Are they really to just give up after 1 year and totally just have a completely fresh rebuild? I with the Saints, I tend to lean no, they are not. I don't think they're quite that real.
And I think
that shouldn't maybe. They do trade their first round picks every single year, so maybe I shouldn't say they're not that quite that reactionary. But I do think they have a little bit more loyalty to Carmichael and Allen than that. I would say. And
I think it's unfair because the Saints team building strategy has been setting them up for this reality for a long, long time, and then to say when you finally reap what you sow, well, I guess the coaches suck. We gotta completely blow it up. I don't know if that makes 100% sense to me.
No, that's exactly what I've been saying. It's going to happen eventually. And I was okay with, as a fan, looking at it with, my heart. It's okay, well, I'm okay with them trying to stretch this thing out for as long as possible because it sucks when you have a team that just, you don't really care to watch them on Sunday. To be honest, I haven't watched a lot of the Saints, on film, which is I use, every week for the past 5 years since we've kind of had access to film and stuff like that. It's I watch Saints. I don't care anymore, man. So it sucks.
Yeah.
As a fan, I like that they were trying to do this. And I had high hopes for Jameis. And like I said, the quarterback's just actually been okay with Dalton, but so I'm okay with that. But I agree, to cut bait after one season when you knew this was going to happen, like you said, man, I think that's just would be ridiculous.
We have another member of this podcast who is in an interesting coaching situation with their favorite team. Matt, we did the playoff simulator yesterday on the live stream and decided unequivocally that the Browns, Packers, and Panthers are all making the playoffs.
It's happening.
Do you support
happening.
the bring back Steve Wilkes agenda?
I'm
at all?
very,
what do you think?
Very dubious of bringing back Steve Wilkes. And I don't think he's a bad coach or anything, but you go on Panthers Twitter and a lot of it's they love this guy. And that's about all people really have to say about him other than the fact that they're 4-4. And while that's good, I wonder if people are so excited from a change of pace from what Matt Rule was, where they're well, that's great. They really like playing for him. Yeah, that should be the expectation. I don't know if Steve Wilks is the offensive X's and O's guy that you need him to be to bring him in super, super long term. And I'm on the fence about it because if he closes out the season and really gets him to the playoffs, which is totally possible, fair enough, man. All right, you go for it. And he's not a bad coach at all, but I do kind of think he's working with a really good roster. I think he's outside of quarterback. And I'm just worried if we keep him and the game plan is like, okay, we're going to bring in somebody to do the entire offense because he has no hand in that. Even if you're right, you're only right for a couple years. Even if you hit on a guy, they're gone very quickly. I think if we got even a decent, I think Ben McAdoo's horrible. They just, some games it's okay. Some games it's we're not throwing real passes for pretty much the entire game. So replacing that could do a lot, and getting a real quarterback could do a lot. But I guess it depends on what's available. He should definitely interview, but it's
a real
close.
quarterback like Matt Corral.
All right.
I'm a staunch never hire the interim.
Don't look at
believer.
me like that, Seth. Come on. you know he's the future. It's okay. You could admit it.
The future,
yeah, it's just too bad they didn't play it, man. And I understand, like, hey, now they're winning games, so you're and they're fucked because the NFC South is so bad. Because they should have been out of the playoffs. Should have been no chance of them making the playoffs, and then you can play Matt Corral because I watched them. We have the Seahawks tomorrow night, so I watched them in the, last week, and it's not like Darnold did anything. You know what I mean? They get the win, but it's like Darnold didn't do anything. So it's like, well, man, you might as well have played Corral and see what's happening. But because
Corral still hurt,
Corral had a season
still hurt, okay.
preseason, and we haven't been able to see him because of it, and it's
that's the real kicker.
So now, you can't rely on a third rounder going into next year. That can't be your game plan. But you also spent 2/3 on this guy, and you don't get to see him even try. It sucks.
Yeah,
I'm not going to back down from what I just said. I think they should have, with whatever cast he has on, I think they should have thrown him out on the field.
They put PJ Walker in there to throw
Darnold.
0 passes past the line of scrimmage one time. Corral could have done that.
If I'm the Panthers, I'm investing in the highest form of VR technology that exists and just trying to get a sense of
what's that?
Corral
What's that
in the metaverse? Where
that
we need to know
QB
something.
simulator?
He is working that. We're playing a full 17-game season on the Oculus Rift QB simulator with Matt Corral this offseason, and we're doing our absolute best to grade him in the metaverse.
We're making Jeff Bezos create a difficulty that is so NFL realistic. Like it's so like think like
just all Madden
on steroids.
But yes, it does suck. It does suck that you don't get that evaluation period. But as far as the coach goes with Wilks, I'm very much anti-hiring the interim. I just don't think that that's a great process. I think if you want something new, get something new. Don't if the staff was bad, if you had bad results, like Freddie Kitchens was an interim coach. I don't fault the Raiders for not hiring their interim last year, why is his name escaping me?
Rich
Bisaccia, yes. And I get that they hired. I don't think I would have hired Josh McDaniels to replace him, but I think studies show that hiring the interim has a lower success rate than just hiring a normal coach, and I think that makes sense to me. And Wilks has done a great job. I think he seems like someone who's really motivated the players. And I think that's kind of always happens when you fire that's like a real kind of wake up call. I always say like the most dangerous team in sports is a team the week after they fire their head coach. They always seem to win games. So I think that there's kind of like a short-term boost when you hire your coach, just from a mentality standpoint, where it's like, we're going to play for this guy. There's kind of this big jolt to the organization, and it kind of gets everybody up and going. But I always have questions about hiring them long term. I'm more against it, and that's just kind of my philosophy with it, which I should stick with, even if they make the playoffs in an incredibly terrible division. So
I got 2 words for you: Freddie Kitchens.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. So,
Freddie Kitchens totally duped people with a bad schedule, bad defensive schedule. I just don't know with Wilks.
Yeah. Wilkes has not had good results in his career recently either, wherever he's been. Missouri was like one of the worst defenses in the country last year, 2 years ago, whenever he was there. So, and then, 1 year, I mean, not really his fault to a certain degree with the year in Arizona or whatever, but it hasn't been very good. Theo, the new coach bump is statistically proven, I believe. I read that in Soccernomics in 2006. So I don't know if that's still a thing, but they did that for soccer teams, and it showed that it's real.
Yeah, I'm sure. I 100%. They have a 100% winning percentage. I know that Steve Wilkes didn't win his first game, but he won his second game, so that's pretty much counts. I 100% believe that. It always seems to happen. I have a question for you, Seth, about the Panthers coaching situation and more Rule. He got hired from the college ranks. He did a great job at Baylor, obviously. Cliff Kingsbury, I don't know if he did a great job at Texas Tech.
He did a job.
He was hired from the college ranks there. Obviously, Kingsbury is probably about to be fired unless the extension saves him for one more year. When people talk about new coaching candidates and hot coaching names for next year, and we'll talk a bit about them, you just don't hear college names anymore. I think it feels like no one from the college ranks is getting hype. And I wonder, do you think we're going to see many college coaches hired into the NFL over the next couple of years? Or do you think that's just kind of more of a thing of the past? Have you given that any thought?
I feel like there's always like peaks and valleys with this particular thing. So maybe we are in a valley right now just because of Rule and Urban Meyer and even Cliff to a certain degree. I mean, like that probably has run its course in Arizona. So yeah, I think probably we're at that, and then we'll get a few in a row because one will work out in 5 years or whatever, and then we'll be in the upswing. So I think you're right that maybe it'll cool down over the next couple of years, and maybe probably this offseason you won't see any. It is interesting to think about like what it means to be a head coach in those two different sports, basically. The same sport on the field, but two completely different atmospheres and environments, stuff like that. And obviously it is completely different. And I always have trouble. I will say I do go back and forth about this, but I do sometimes have trouble with the idea of hiring a player's coach or a father figure type of coach, where it's like, hey, I'm just going to put good assistants in there and I'm going to do that. And it's like, well, at the end of the day, like motivation is not as big of a deal probably in the NFL. Like these guys are kind of probably should be motivated. I mean, I don't know for sure, and I've been there, but like I would imagine that it's less of a job, less of a task to motivate at the pro level. So that's where it always is concerning. So where Cliff and why, look at it with Cliff. Yeah, it's not working out this year. They've won a lot of games there, and I know that it's really the fall off at the end of each season. This season notwithstanding, the offense kind of worked, right? So it's like,
yeah,
and that's his thing, right? He is an OC, right? So I think that would be the way I would do it. I'm just, like I said, I do go back and forth, but I'm always wary of the players coach, the motivator coach coming from college to the NFL.
Yeah, if Cliff gets fired and he becomes a laughing stock for having a losing record in college and the NFL, lest us all remember the cool things he did in the running game.
Yeah.
That's the important thing, really.
How the Cardinals were like the worst, historically terrible running the football the year before he got there. And then they made a very gutsy decision to get Kyler and become more of a spread offense, and their running game, I thought, from kind of a spread I had more opinion. I had better ways to articulate this a couple of years ago when I first saw it, when I actually kind of liked Cliff. Now I don't know so much, but I remember he did some cool stuff in the running game from the spread, and drafting Kyler was a bold move that really helped out. But some of the passing game stuff, the predictability and maybe the overall tension between him and Kyler, it just doesn't seem like a bunch of happy like, yes, motivators I agree that at the NFL level, they know they know a lot of the technique at this point. They're all playing for their, like, not all of them, but a lot of them are playing for millions of dollars and supporting a family, and they're doing it extremely professionally at this point. But you do need, I think, to be a bit of a better motivator than Cliff was, whose team is like screaming at
I heard a clip from Rich Sherman today talking on Kevin Clark's podcast, and he was talking about Shanahan. And he was like, well, why does Shanahan win? Why is he so good? Blah, blah, blah. And Sherman's response was basically like, he knows everything about each player on the roster. And he knows like, and what he said, and it might be just like more than just what I'm about to say, but he was like, hey, the practice roster guy or the third string defensive tackle is Cliff can go up to him and be like, hey, I think you need to do a better job at and not getting reached and using your feet and use your power. And the backside corner, the second string corner, who, obviously Cliff is an OC. So it's like, Kyle is an OC. So like, but he knows the whole team. And like I said, maybe it's even more, maybe he knows their family situations. I don't know. But that is motivation. When your coach can go to bat for you like that, because he knows you, rather than being like, rah, let's go out there and beat the shit out of the team. Like that, the way Sherman was talking about Shanahan, that's motivation. That is so different than I think the motivation that we usually talk about with sports.
Yeah, I do think that like even at the NFL level, like everyone needs some form of leadership. Like even like Tom Brady needs someone to like cool him down at times. Right. But like, that doesn't always come out in the same way, right? Everyone needs someone, but it doesn't always come out in the same way. So,
or look at McDaniel and Tua, right? Really think I know like some of the stuff about Tua's confidence, like maybe that gets overblown, but I like Flores, I really think didn't like him. Like from a personal level, I think Flores kind of thought Tua was soft and he really just didn't believe in him. And then McDaniel, like Tua's the same guy. He's doing all the same stuff that not all the same stuff, but a lot of the same stuff that he did in college, right? He always had these strengths. And Flores like kind of hinted at it with all the RPOs they ran. Like they were definitely putting an effort to play to Tua's strengths in the offense last year. I know when Dolphins fans talk, they're like, well, our situation was so horrible last year with Tua. And like the offensive line was truly garbage and the coach didn't believe in him. But I will say like, because there's always the Herbert Tua debate, and I've made this argument a million times over the last couple months. It's like with the Chargers right now, like their scheme doesn't fit their quarterback's strengths. At least with Tua last year, I felt like it did. There's tons of nits to pick or criticisms to make about the situation Tua was in last year, but at least I think the offense made sense. This year, the offense also makes sense for Tua, but at the same time, you also have a coach who actually likes him and is like propping him up, and that is.
I think at the end of the day,
Mike McDaniels is not a rah. He's a more like, we're gonna, good job, buddy. I think at
the end of the day, you just want, as a coach, you want your players to want to play together and be like for each other and for you, right? Like you're coaching for them, they're playing for you. It's like, that's like the whole idea of a team is like, you need to be able to bring people together, right? And if you can't do that, then that's the motivation thing, is like being able to bring people together.
But I think, and going back to Shanahan, because I've heard other stories about Shanahan, I think this is from Austin Hooper back in the day. But a way you can do that, and again, because it's not just like, I'm going to get up on my soapbox and yell, but like Shanahan was like, Hooper was talking about Shanahan, where it's like, we would go into a game and Shanahan would say, this is going to happen. And it happens. Like, that's how you get buy-in, right? That's how you get leaders. That's, again, it's all part of it. It's not like you said, it's leadership, but it's not in the same type of way we believe in leadership, but it is a way to get people together, people to buy in.
Yep.
Yeah, if you're just really good at your job, people will buy in.
Wins cause buy-in, so just win.
Yeah, I guess
that is fair.
Theo, you brought up the Chargers. We haven't really talked about, Brandon Staley and Joe Lombardi and that whole situation there. There's definitely a lot of discussion that needs to be had about, the way the Chargers run their offense with the complete lack of downfield
have
throws.
Some Hank, have some stick, have some jet bubble stream.
They have so many problems. I feel like they built their they should not have invested in these wide receivers. It's a massive, massive, massive mistake, and it's so hard to fix. And they can change up their scheme somewhat. At the end of the day, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams probably combined to be, one of the highest paid wide receiver duos in the league right now. I don't know where they'd rank, but I'm assuming top 5. And they don't separate like that anymore. Keenan Allen is washed, and Mike Williams isn't like that.
Oh, but he had 12. My TikTok comments informed me that he had 12 catches for 90 yards versus the Dolphins. So,
he's the greatest receiver of all time.
Apologize to Keenan Allen. And we'll know. The people commenting probably mad. Never mind.
I'm still pro Staley. I'm biased. I've talked to 2 current NFL coaches in my life, and of the 2, only Brandon Staley I had a good interaction with. So I'm like very pro Brandon Staley.
Okay.
And like you look at the defense, there is so many bad players on that defense, and they're bad. I mean, I'm not saying they're like, oh my god, wow, they're 5th in the league in defense, whatever. Like they're still bad, but like I just don't know what you can do. I don't know what you can do with that group. So it's really, to me, the issues there are Telesco, and the roster building has been bad. Like you said, the receivers just don't fit. The offensive line is still bad. After all these years, it's still bad. The players that got in free agency, and I'm going to be honest, I thought this was perfect, that they did everything they were supposed to do in free agency with Mack and J.C. Jackson and Sebastian Joseph Day.
So high on this team.
Khalil Mack is not the same player he was, so he still gives you a little bit. Joseph Day has been awful this year. J.C. Jackson, awful, not injured. It's been really bad. So I'm more like anti-Telesco and anti-Lombardi rather than I am anti-Brandon Staley.
I always feel a little bad too when I criticize Lombardi, because Lombardi definitely deserves criticism, but at the same time, it's like there's not that much he can do. Like it'll be like 3rd down and long, and he'll have a bunch of guys like settling down at the sticks or something, and it's like, why don't you run a man beater? Like it's clearly man. Why are you settling at the sticks? And it's like, well. And then at the same time, in the back of my mind, like,
who's beating man in that?
Who's beating man, right? So it's like, it's a little bit of everything. I always think it's funny, though, because I see a lot of Sean Payton to the Chargers talk on Twitter. They're like, oh, next year. It's so funny. It's like, do they know the meme, the reply image? Do they know who their offensive coordinator is and what he runs? Do they know who Sean Payton is? So that's not happening. I 100% think that Staley will be back next year, and Lombardi might be gone. I think that's probably the correct decision, is probably get a new offensive guy, keep Staley. I think that is what they will do. And I don't know if anyone has any different predictions about that, but I think that just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
that's what they'll go with.
I think Lombardi needs to go, and you do have to get you have to get someone with some athleticism and burst and juice.
I will pay $1 million for Arians. Like when the Bucks clean house and everyone, it's all different next year. Like, let please Herbert run the Carson Palmer 2015 stuff and the Brady last year stuff. Like that is it. If it doesn't work, then everyone can slander whoever they want in that Chargers offense. But like that is the scheme that would be. Yeah. Perfect. That would be perfect.
Average depth of target needs to be like 14 yards.
It is funny because like that, the depth of target stuff, and it hit me like right in the face Sunday night. Man, they can't protect for shit. It is so fucking bad. Oh my god! On play action, they're running play action for the sole purpose of like, hey, we'll buy ourselves an extra half second, and they still can't protect Herbert. Doesn't matter. But and let's go back to the whole roster. Is
the tackle, I know PFF, we've talked about PFF grades. I saw the stat that the average non-quarterback PFF grade of the Chargers is like the lowest in the league. It's the very lowest in the league on non-quarterback positions.
That's crazy.
Always been right.
That's the they have their grades. I deleted all of my tweets. I said, well, that's always my take. When PFF grades push mine priors, they're absolutely 100%.
Everything
correct and
is.
okay. So
Yeah, if you agree with my
I
priors,
think
you're
that
right.
Lombardi will be gone. I think that the offensive results from any metric that whatever the GM or ownership look at, they'll say like, it should not be this low. So I think that they can definitely come to the conclusion that they should change something on offense.
Is that you're acting like ownership would do that. Would be like, oh, let me look at the metrics before I make this decision. Like, let me look at time to throw metrics so I decide whether to keep Brandon Staley or not. Like, oh boy, I don't know, man.
I think they can look at just like yards and touchdown metrics. They're like, oh, we should have. They'll look at like points per game and they'll be like scratching their head a little bit, like what's going on?
Guess we should fire Brandon Staley, right? Head coach who's not putting up points. Like that's
right. Yeah, let's promote. Let's promote Joe Lombardi because the defensive guy is crimping his vibe. But yeah, I don't know what'll happen.
I don't know, but with all these coaches that are terrible and must go, there's also going to be then a void. And how do you fill that void? There's a lot of guys that could be, on the move, whether it be Sean Payton coming back and ending up on a team. Brian Flores is in Pittsburgh right now as like an assistant or like an assistant linebacker.
He's the linebackers coach,
okay.
I believe.
There's obviously, he gets talked about every single offseason, Eric Bieniemy. Do any of these guys see as potential landing spots for any of these teams?
I think D'Amico feels like almost guaranteed to be a head coach somewhere.
Yeah.
That Sean Payton seems also almost guaranteed to be a head coach somewhere. I'm not sure on Flores. I think there's probably needs to be another year where he's not in the limelight with everything that's gone on. I think that's probably best.
Yeah.
But I do think
Tua looking this good is a problem for him, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that he'll get a head coaching job. I honestly don't think he'll ever get a head coaching job again. I honestly think with the lawsuit and then Tua, all the rumors about him not liking Tua, and then Tua playing way more confident and better once I don't think anybody's going to want to bring that into their building, fair or not.
Maybe.
I don't think he's ever getting a job again. I think obviously he has a job now. He'll get a job again.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll go to the college ranks or something like that. But I don't think he's going to get I don't think he's going to get any consideration for being a head coach. A guy I do like is Shane Waldron. I think before the season, obviously all these McVay guys, anyone who's ever spoken to McVay gets a head coaching job somewhere. This guy has spoken to McVay. He checks that box. And then he went to Seattle, and Seattle's offense is way better than anyone thought it would be with Geno Smith. So I kind of thought before the season, if this offense is good, Waldron will probably get a job or a call at least somewhere, and it is good. So I see him probably getting a job. He's not quite as hyped up as Ryans or Sean Payton, but I think that I don't know if you've given any thought to this, Seth, but I think that's a pretty safe bet that he at least gets, his name is pretty high up there in those conversations. I
like what they've done in Seattle. I think that getting the stink of Russell Wilson off of you is going to help you lead you to potentially a better landing spot in the future. I think that would be something to look at. There's the Ben Johnson, the Lions offensive coordinator. Right. They've been awesome this year, right? So very good chance. I think it's interesting because even myself, I couldn't tell you before the season started who the Lions offensive coordinator was. But I don't think
I'd probably make up a name and I'd be like, Ben Johnson. And they'd be like, that's right.
That's correct.
And I think I know we don't want to believe this, but I think it's owners aren't necessarily smart because they own a football team, because they have a lot of money. So it takes time. It takes has to be a building of steam for a name for a coach to get to that level. D'Amico Ryans is a good example. There is so much steam building,
yes,
and fire behind him that it's he is going to get a job. Because it's someone the owners are all they hear is stuff like this. I talked to It's really funny. I talked to a guy who does work in production and broadcast for the NFL, and he was like, he had talked to an OC, and he loved it when this guy would go on national TV, and if they ran like a trick play or something, and he would hype up the OC. He'd be like, "Oh, what a great call by blah blah blah! I can't believe it. He's so smart and creative and stuff like that." Because owners are watching the game on the broadcast. Owners are not watching the all 22. You know what I mean? Like they are listening and they are hearing names and like, I want this guy. Everyone is talking about this guy. I want him. So, anyways, going back to Ben Johnson, it's like no one knew who this guy was until like 2 months ago. So, and I'm not saying he won't get a job, but like he's obviously done a great job with the Lions offense, but it's like it probably takes a year for him to build up a little more steam before he gets the head coach job.
Yeah. Oh man, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
You could it definitely makes sense though. Yeah. Owners aren't, they're not grinding the film. Yeah. The old billionaires who run a candy company and
you got the Haslams owning like Pilot J.
They go and check on their cocoa children in like the Congo and then not grinding film on the way there.
Their private jet.
Damn, Ben Johnson. I really love how they've built the play action game off the threat of the run. Like, no, they don't know what any. It's like basic stuff and they don't know what that means. So yeah, that is definitely true, which is hilarious. And that's why, otherwise, you're right. D'Amico Ryans would have gotten a job last year, right? So, yeah, I agreed. Where do you think the Saints will be picking in the first round when they trade Sean Payton? Where are you guys?
The issue is like, let's say the Chargers are a good example, right? The Chargers are going to win just enough games, and like if they don't make the playoffs, they'll have like the 14th pick or something like that, the 16th pick. Like that's not good enough. I need a top 5 pick here back for Sean Payton, but Sean Payton won't go anywhere unless there's a Herbert there. You know what I mean? So that's kind of the issue. Maybe Arizona could be the interesting one there with Kyler there. That's what he wants, right? That's why he left the Saints, because Breeze was gone, and he's like, I don't want to see Taysom Hill throw another pass for the rest of my life. So, yeah.
I don't know. Do you think Sean Payton said that he's the one? You're the one letting him throw.
Yeah, I think so. The Cardinals would be a good one. For me personally, the Cardinals would be a good one because it would be like a top 10 pick. So hopefully it's Cardinals.
Yeah, I guess I could see that. I definitely could see that. I wonder where else. I wonder if the prospect of Wilson still intrigues him. I know there's going to be new ownership in Denver pretty soon, and they're really rich. They're now like the richest franchise in sports, and they can pay whatever they want. And I wonder if a splash move like that would be something that Denver make, because they need to do so. They're so screwed. They are so incredibly screwed that their best chance might, but they don't have a first round pick at all, do they?
Nope.
Damn. So yeah. Okay. Well,
yeah,
maybe
they're really screwed, man. It's really bad.
They really are.
Yeah,
screwed,
no, the Bucks are not the Broncos are they're cooked.
He gets a lot of hype in Panthers circles, but I don't think he'd want to go to somewhere that would have no quarterback situation. And honestly,
that's the thing. Like, I don't see him
in the division
going to a place where the quarterback situation is not set. But then it's like you're really limiting yourself there, which is fine. Like he's Sean Payton, he's allowed to do that. So
yeah. He doesn't even need he could be done. Like he could just be done, and he doesn't have to.
I don't blame him for that at all. Well, that's what I would do too. And I wonder if maybe that comes back around to he's not going to go anywhere this offseason. He's going to say, "I'm waiting for a real good opportunity. I don't see it right now. I'm good. I'll wait another year. Let's see who gets Caleb Williams. I'll go there."
Do you think the Saints? I'm not quite sure how this works. Would the Saints just be able to trade him whenever he does come back, or if he waits long enough, do they lose rights on that?
Yeah, I don't know what the deal is. I think it probably has to do with however many years he has left on the contract. Because he retired, right? So he's still under contract if he comes back to the Saints. So I would imagine it has to do with that. And it's not necessary.
Well, the Saints just need to get a franchise quarterback then. And then
did I not just tell you about Andy Dalton?
It's
like, remember, Sean hasn't seen Andy Dalton like this yet.
That's true, man.
It's through 2024. That's how long his contract runs. And then after that, he can go wherever he wants.
All right. I think that's a good take. I think next year, I think that might be true. I wonder if he'd want to play with Kyler with how the national media's opinion of Kyler is so ungodly low. Like, it wouldn't, like, when they played the 49ers on Monday night, I've never seen a pregame show like that, where ESPN was just ripping Kyler to shreds and putting Colt McCoy on this pedestal as like this running the offense god. And they're like showing Kyler yelling at the coach. I think Steve Young insinuated that Kyler needed to install the offense so he respects how hard coaches work, is legitimately what he said live on ESPN. He said Kyler needs to install the offense and come up with the game plan so he stops yelling at his coaches. I don't think Sean Payton simply must be smarter than that, but I wonder how much of a draw Kyler is, and I would want to play with Kyler. I think Kyler. I'm not Kyler's
he plays Call of Duty,
soldier,
man,
but
so this, you can't.
I hate those jokes so much. But I'm definitely a Kyler believer more than some are right now. But I wonder, like, in the higher ups of the world, like in the, he's a Fox Sports analyst, so I wonder what he thinks of Kyler and if that would actually intrigue him, because it feels like some guys are just so low on him. So I think maybe next year is the year that he gets traded, if at all. I wonder if that just
the Kyler narrative.
But
it's horrible. It's horrible, obviously, and it's funny how he
legitimately, he should legitimately be like in MVP consideration. Not that he would ever win, but in terms of like value to his team, he is everything. Everything is go Kyler go. It's quite, and Hopkins make a cool catch, basically. There's nothing else going for that team right now other than Kyler Murray, and he's sick. He is sick. So,
I know at the height of the Herbert versus Tua conversation and all, like, the social media quarterback and all this stuff, there was a small minority of people that were like, why do we have like you and Theo, because I made a video about it, and we were like, why are you and Theo defending Herbert like this? I haven't heard you say a goddamn word about Kyler Murray all season long. And I'm like, honestly, I have no response to that. Like, you're right. Kyler deserves like some defense because he does not get the level of respect that he should be getting.
But like that specific narrative of like, he's not a good teammate. He's not this. He's not that. He's not intelligent. Man, and then when
it's disrespectful,
you're seeing it right now in San Francisco, and there's very similar ideas there with Trey Lance is not ready. He was never ready. Pretty understands the playbook. He understands what Shanahan wants and all that stuff. And there's obviously, we don't have to get into the racial aspects of it, but that's basically what it is. And it's like, it's
a dog whistle. Yeah.
But it's like the same thing. Colt McCoy has like 1.5 good games, or they win. It's not even that. I don't even remember. I mean, he won like 2-1 like last year, and he won like this year or whatever. But like, he's not. It's Colt McCoy, guys.
Yeah, I mean they scored 13 points in the Patriots game. But
yeah, exactly. We're here. We hear this. It's the same thing every single time. A guy who we believe has potential is not playing up to what our like perceived idea of him is. And with Kyler, it's like, well, he won the Heisman, he was number 1 over the pick, so he should be like the best player that's ever lived. And if he's like just under that, which, like you said, Kyler was an MVP candidate for the first like 12 weeks of last year. They won so many games with him.
Oh yeah, he was.
And it's like the second he's not. Yeah, exactly.
He was MVP for the first 12 years. Yeah,
and then Hopkins got hurt.
He wasn't
because they asked him to do everything. Yeah. He got hurt because they asked him to do.
And Hopkins doesn't start the first 6 games this year, right? And you trade for whatever, and it doesn't matter. But like, the second you have one guy who is Brock Purdy or who is Colt McCoy or who is any of these guys who come in from 1 game or 2 games and they don't shit the bed completely. It's like we have to start relitigating everything, and it's like absolutely ridiculous every time.
Yeah,
Yes.
it is.
Anyways, Trey Lance is going to win the MVP next.
Anything else? That's the agenda.
That's what they're saying.
We're gonna have. It's gonna be he's gonna beat out Tom Brady in camp once they sign Brady. He's gonna beat him out and then win MVP. That's your
exactly.
San Francisco 49ers next year.
Yeah, but no, I don't think there's anything else. It'll be a really interesting coaching carousel this off season. But thank you again, Seth, for joining us. It's been an absolute blast. Let people know where they can find you. Just a reminder for those that missed the last time you were on.
PFF_Seth. I don't really tweet anymore, but you can still follow me if you'd like.
I'll give him a follow.
That is true. Why do you should tweet?
I don't
more.
need to, buddy. I got the job because I tweeted a lot, so I don't have to tweet anymore. That was the whole thing.
that's the.
I'm that close with that on TikTok, by the way. That's I got the job because I posted on TikTok, and
I don't want to make TikTok.
I'm this close to just being like, I don't need to do that anymore, but I still will for some period of time. But anyway, thank you so much, Seth.
Been an absolute blast, and thank you all so much for tuning in. See you next year.
We'll have you back on a year from now.
And as always, everyone, from Corn Boy, Bird Boy, and Lemon Boy, we will catch you all on the Flippity Flop.